Good morning and welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm John Dickerson. In 4 days, voters in Virginia and New Jersey will vote for governor. Soon thereafter, political analysts and partisans will strain to find deep meaning in the result. We're going to get started early on that process. First, with a report from our Fernando Suarez on the latest from Virginia.
It was a state that helped put Barack Obama in the White House, voting for a Democrat for the first time since 1964. But as Virginians head to the polls to vote for a new governor next Tuesday, the Democrat is far behind in the race.
The magic is over and the honeymoon is dead. I think that's what at least the election in Virginia will show.
A Washington Post poll out this week shows Republican Bob McDonnell leading Democrat Cree Deeds by 11 points.
Democrats have lost momentum and maybe they've been, if anything, too successful.
Success that has been driven by a popular president whose approval ratings remain well above 50%. So why isn't the president's popularity boosting his fellow Democrat in Virginia?
What these elections prove is that President Obama has trouble transferring popularity, that if he's not on the ballot, he really can't generate coattails.
The White House is trying to fend off criticism, going so far as attacking Deeds' campaign strategy behind the scenes. White House spokesman Robert Gibbs insists a Republican win is not a referendum on the president.
Roughly 70% of the state said their vote had nothing to do with the President of the United States.
Hello, Virginia!
Mr. Obama made a last-minute trip to Norfolk Tuesday to rally the sizable African-American population there, a group that turned out in record numbers in 2008.
Go out and get your cousin who you had to drag to the polls last November, Cousin Pookie. You go out and get him and you tell him you got to vote again this time.
Given that the president isn't on the ballot and it's an off-year election, those record numbers could drop as much as 40% this year. Old Dominion University political scientist Michael Clemens.
It's a big problem, and certainly it's hoped that President Obama's appearance here is going to help to stimulate that.
Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Steele thinks the president's visit won't make much difference.
Sending the president back into Virginia, while admirable and probably important to sort of gin up their base, at the end of the day, he's not on the ballot. And folks are voting for this individual who's going to be the next governor of the state.
But both parties will be looking to the results for clues about what may lie ahead in next year's midterm elections. Fernando Suarez, CBS News, Arlington, Virginia.
Joining me now are the executive directors of the Republican and Democratic Governors Associations who are going to help us walk through this, figure out what we need to know. Nick Ayers, I want to start with you. You are in the red corner with the Republicans. What one thing are we going to know coming out of these races next week?
You know, I find it a little bit silly that Robert Gibbs would say that, stand there and cite a poll that say 70% of Virginians say this has nothing to do with President Obama. The question I would ask in return is if Cree Deeds were 11 points ahead today, what do you think the White House would be saying about what this says about the White House? They'd say this is a clear indication that a state that we just carried by 7 points, that independents in that state still support our agenda. And the reality is this is a purple state. It's a great indicator of what's going on at the national level. And while I don't think it reflects directly on the president, I do think this says a lot about his agenda. It's an agenda that Bob McDonnell has campaigned against and one that Cree Deeds has found a tough time to dance around.
All right, Nathan Daschle from the blue team. What are we going to learn on Tuesday, and then you can respond.
Right. Well, thanks, John, for that question. People want to look at these races as if there's some sort of referendum on President Obama. I think the analysis is totally wrong. I think these are a referendum on the Republican Party, and here's why. In 1973, that was the last time that Virginia elected a governor with the same party as the party in the White House. I'm 35 years old. In my lifetime, Virginia has never elected a governor of the same party as the White House. New Jersey hasn't done it since 1985. So if the Republicans this year are become the first opposition party in 24 years to not win both of these seats, I think it says something about their ideas. I think it says something about their leadership and whether or not America wants to come back.
That's a lot to say in terms of what voters take away from this. I mean, if a Republican wins in Virginia, a big state that we all heard about with President Obama, aren't they just going to say, I mean, they may listen, some will listen to what you say, but others may say, this is bad news for Obama.
Well, they might say that. And look, Bob McDonnell has run a very, very good campaign. I'm not at all willing to write this thing off. I think Cree can very much still win this race. We know that Creek closes strong. We know that he still needs to perform with Northern Virginia voters who also decide late. So I think with the president's visit, I think Creek can still turn this thing out. But let's just keep in mind that Virginia likes to be independent. As Nick said, it's a very Republican state. It's probably more red than blue, but it likes to be independent of the White House, and that's the streak it's shown since 1973.
Nick Ayers, let me ask you a question about the Republican Party in general. The polls don't look great for Washington Republicans. Do Republicans trying to get elected in Virginia and New Jersey embrace their Washington colleagues or run away from them?
Look, Bob McDonnell's run a campaign about solving problems, and that's something that I think our party can take away from this election. Bob's not made this race about social issues or personality or characters. He's made it about the issues that Americans and Virginians are concerned about, which is energy, jobs, the economy, and taxes, and mainly spending. All of that relates to spending. I think it will say a lot. I think it'll be a great lesson for our party that in a state that Barack Obama just won by 7 points, in which Carville and others were predicting would be Democrat for a generation now in Virginia, that just 12 months ago when Obama won it by 7 points, 12 months later Republican, frankly is probably going to have a blowout victory, not only winning the governor's race, but I predict will win the lieutenant governor's race and the attorney general's race. That's only happened one other time in Virginia history.
Nathan, let me ask you about Democratic intensity. Barack Obama created a whole new class of Democratic voters. Tell me what it looks like. I realize presidential years are different from off years, and that's very important to keep in mind, but what does the Democratic Party look like now in terms of intensity, and where are those Obama Democrats?
I think we are as fired up as ever. One of the things we'll see in Virginia and New Jersey is the performance of the Obama surge voters. But I think in both states you have such a clear contrast in the candidates. And Nick said that Bob McDonnell's been focused on economic issues. And frankly, that's correct. His campaign has been. But that's because Bob has not wanted to talk about his social issues where he is well outside the mainstream of Virginia. Now, these are issues that Virginia voters care about a great deal. And I think you will see them coming out in the polls. And I think you will see the surge voters coming out in the polls.
Well, is the culture war attack on McDonnell, did that not work? Because certainly the Dees campaign spent a lot of time trying to make news, and you're still working on that account, but it hasn't punched through.
It hasn't punched through yet, but the proof will be in the pudding. We'll see on Tuesday whether or not we can get our candidate elected. But I just want to keep in mind that Bob McDonnell started this race with a Gulf force wind at his back. It's been since 1973 that Virginia has elected somebody of the same party as the White House. So by simple fact that we have a Democrat in the White House, we knew all along this was going to be a very, very difficult race and that Republicans would have a huge advantage. Now, we've seen that play out, but we think we're in a very good position. We think that our candidate has a great message, and I'm confident that if voters can see those messages side by side, that they'll conclude that Cree is the best candidate for governor.
Last question to you, Nick. We've talked a lot about Virginia. Let's talk a little bit about New Jersey. What are voters going to learn from that race?
I think that Nathan and I would probably both agree it has less to do with national politics. One of the reasons that Virginia has had so much to do with national politics, not only is it in the Washington media market, but it's an open seat. In New Jersey, it's very different. You have an incumbent governor, and when that is the case, governor's races are about governor's records. And John Corzine has done well when he's made this race about everything but for himself, when he can bring in Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or the Easter Bunny, for all that matters. The only time he can move numbers is when he's not talking about his own record. If this race is about his record, then Chris Christie wins on Tuesday.
Nathan, do you agree with that?
Well, I will say then on Tuesday night, if John Corzine wins, I look forward to coming back here and we can both reaffirm that New Jersey voters support John Corzine's record.
Okay.
New Jersey is a great, great race for political observers because it is a reminder that issues matter. And that's really what's defining this race. You have a series of ethical questions around Chris Christie, each one of which would disqualify him for governor. But it's really the issues. You have one governor who has given 100,000 kids health care, who supports paid family leave, who supports pre-K education. You have another candidate who opposes paid family leave, who supports a constitutional amendment to ban abortion, who calls pre-K education babysitting. There's a clear contrast on issues.
Right.
And that's why I think Chris Christie is imploding as a candidate.
We're going to leave it there. So we'll see next week how our national picture has changed. Thanks to both of you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.